I'd like now to introduce Professor Stephen Garton, who's Professor of History as a Provost and Deputy Vice-Chancellor at the University of Sydney. He has published widely on many aspects of Australian social, cultural and medical history, as well as British and American history. He's the author of The Cost of War, Australian Return, and a number of articles on demobilisation and nationalism in the British Dominions and in India, and the impact of the Great War on the Australian society, an impact that I would argue continues to this day. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the dais Professor Stephen Garton to talk about demobilisation and its aftermath, the impact of the Great War on Australia.
Very much for the invitation. As Paul outlined, I've been interested in the whole issue of soldiers returning to society. I'm not a military historian, but I am interested in the whole issue of that return. And so a number of years ago, more than 20 years ago, published a book called The Cost of War, but have done a number of articles on that whole issue of what happens to Australian society and politics as a consequence of returning soldiers after World War I, World War II and Vietnam. And I've also had the great pleasure of working closely with Brad on the New South Wales and the Great War project, which was sponsored by the New South Wales government to put a book into all public schools in New South Wales about the experience of New South Wales during the Great War, and we're involved in a number of other projects. So a great honour, as I say, to be here to talk about the issue of demobilisation. Now, I could go on for a very long time on this, and I could work as well into the 1920s and 1930s, but I'm going to concentrate a little bit more narrowly, given the focus on the direct aftermath. And I think when we think about demobilisation after the Great War, we've got to think about it as a process. Actually, the last returned service personnel did not arrive back in Australia until 1920, early 1920. It took 172 ships to bring back that group. So there's a long interregnum between the Declaration of the Armistice in 1918 and the final servicemen coming back officially. And I use that word officially because there's a whole bunch of Australians who actually take a lot longer to come back to Australia, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, because they're doing things in Europe and North America. Some are actually continuing to fight. There are some Australians who go on and fight for the White Russians, or the Bolsheviks, and in other conflicts in Europe and the Middle East. So we need to think about it as much more of a process than there's the armistice, then they return. There's a lot of interesting things that happen in that interregnum. For all of the forces, it took a huge logistical effort to take the Americans back, the Canadians back, the Australians back, the Indians back, the West Indians back. Huge amount of logistical effort to get all of those groups back. And that meant that the soldiers at the end of the war had to stay around for a long period of time, and that created a lot of political problems for the military authorities because of the considerable discontent of many of the soldiers. Nothing to do, the war was over, they wanted to get back home. There were significant strikes and uprisings amongst those return soldier groups that required military authorities to come and quell some of the disturbances in the camps while they were waiting for demobilisation. And of course, Monash was put in charge of the demobilisation effort, and he understood that considerable effort had to be put into ensuring that it was a smooth process of return. And that meant bringing in lecturers, bringing in training systems, training soldiers in trade so that they could return into the workforce. A number of soldiers were sent off to British universities in order to get higher education training. Lectures were happening everywhere, cinema and plays and all of those sorts of things were brought in as part of that whole demobilisation process. Some very important developments happened as a consequence. Some of the service personnel did get very serious qualifications and experience in their time in Europe, which they then subsequently brought back to Australia. I'm currently involved with a group that's doing what we call the Expert Nation project, funded by the Australian Research Council. Everyone tries to look at the negative consequences of war, of which there were many. And in fact, war created an incredible context for uplift in terms of our understanding and our capacity to deal with issues. Incredible developments in industrial chemistry, in plastic surgery, in dental maxillofacial surgery, in nursing care, in the control of epidemic diseases, in the control of psychiatric and psychological conditions. A lot of amazing things happen in terms of creating expertise and creating a context of crisis which mobilise all sorts of innovations that then flow through into the post-war period. So the Expert Nation project is looking at all of the graduates of the six Australian universities of the time and what happened to them during the war, what their expertise was, and how they brought that back in the 1920s and 1930s and absolutely transformed Australian society. You see a whole range of research institutions emerging in the 20s and 30s. The CSIRO, a lot of agricultural research, a lot of public health, tropical medicine institutes, infectious disease control groups, all mobilising. Engineering, a lot of engineering expertise comes out of the war, and a lot of those, the experience of the war influences Monash in terms of creation of the sewage system in Melbourne, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of people building the Story Bridge, the Harbour Bridge, all those sorts of things had an impact from the lessons and experience of the Great War. So there's an interesting story that's yet to be written about how that experience of the war created a context for general uplift in the 1920s and 30s that had a profound impact on Australian society and culture from those university-educated people who brought their experience back. But the more general story that many of you will be familiar with is the difficulties many of those returned service personnel faced on return. We've got to understand that many of them have been at the front line for 3, 4, 5 years and with very little relief, haven't seen families. And of course, they were all in a kind of conversation with what was happening back on the home front through letters, conversations with relatives. And they understood of the conscription referendum of 1916 and 1917. They knew about the Great Railway Strike of 1917. They knew about the food riots and cost of living riots that were happening back home. There was a sense of attention and a sense that the home front hadn't always supported them as best it might. There were stories of girlfriends running off with other people. There was a sense of coming back to a culture and society that hadn't really appreciated them and supported them as much as they felt they required. And that creates a context of disquiet. There's also a growing concern for many of those returned soldiers that although the government's gearing up a comprehensive repatriation system and a very comprehensive pension system, it wasn't going to be enough. They resented the fact of medical tests to find out whether they were 5% or 10% or 20% or 25% or 50% or TBI. They felt a sense of entitlement and they needed to get that affirmation from the government. And that created a complex and volatile immediate post-war situation in those first couple of years of return. Not many people know that there were 11 major big ones. 2, 3-day, 4-day riots where soldiers protested about the inadequacy of the repatriation system, or protested about what they saw as Sinn Féin or Bolshevik or anti-soldier sentiment around the place. Return soldiers actually captured the administrator of Darwin and imprisoned him, demanding higher repatriation benefits for the return of the administration of Darwin. So those sorts of things give you an indication of the considerable disquiet and discontent that some of the returned soldiers brought back with them, and that created an enormous political challenge for Australian governments, federal and state. Hence the emphasis on repatriation and ensuring that the repatriation benefits were well spread. There's an interesting dimension to Australian repatriation benefits. Immediately after the Great War, they actually come in at a very low level of disability. 5% was enough disability under whatever test they put in to get you a pension. It didn't come into the American system or the British system until you get a 20%. So there was a sense in which they wanted to spread the benefits very widely to ensure, get that buy-in, get that affirmation that the government was making a difference and contributing in order to calm things down. And a lot of other things were occurring. Of course, there was strong emphasis, as you will know, on the soldier settlement scheme, wanting to get soldiers out of the city where discontent was happening and settled as yeoman farmers on the land as with the wife and kids, in order to bring a sense of social security and a sense that the city was a place where discontent might flourish and potential disruptions and riots might occur. Interestingly, this is not peculiar to Australia. If you go and look what's happening in the UK and Canada and parts of America, you find very similar dynamics happening. And this is one of the interesting things for me when I've started to look at the similar dynamics in the sort of British Dominion world and more generally and India as well. And the West Indies. The whole political issue that flows very much into the armistice and Versailles and what Billy Hughes was doing there, and what politicians thought they needed to do in order to create a context of embrace of returned service personnel, to bring them back into the fold because of the fear of disquiet, the fear of family disruption, the fear that the society was potentially under threat from returned service personnel who had grievances about what was happening. And the Australian example is strikingly different in some ways and yet strikingly similar in other ways to those other countries. So the similar bits are returned soldiers in all of those British dominions had that sense of grievance about being let down by the home front, about inadequate provision and recompense for their sacrifice. And what that produced is a growing nationalism in many of those British dominions, that they fought for Britain. Britain hadn't supported them as much as they wanted, and now was the time to strike out as a kind of independent nation, that they had fought and proven themselves. And you see in Canada governments that stressed, or political parties that stressed the need for Canada to be more independent, were winning the immediate post-war elections. Exactly the same thing in South Africa. The Smuts government was defeated in the first election after the return of the Great War because it was seen as collaborating too much with Britain, and therefore border parties that stressed a bit more of independence were winning the elections. Similar sort of thing similarly, we see in Australia a sense that we were now a nation. We had fought and died, we had made the blood sacrifice. Very strong, powerful, rhetorical trope of the time. Australians had the highest casualty rate of any armed force. Not in terms of population, so there's some interesting ways in which we can manage the figures, but when you look at it as the proportion of the force that was there, it's the highest of all the Allied forces. So of course it gives great rhetorical power to the returned soldier groups that the blood sacrifice warranted a strong statement about the importance of the returned service personnel, the Anzacs, who had proven their worth and had established a nation. And people like, as we know, embrace these return service organisations, flourish in arguing for the importance of these sorts of statements about the importance of Anzac and the importance of the Anzac legend and the distinctive contribution of the Anzacs to the creation of the nation. That did create some interesting political tensions, because one of the claims that some returned service organisations put forward and some returned soldier groups put forward was that a claim about the citizen soldier. They put forward in the magazine, important magazine, The Soldier, an argument that only returned servicemen should be allowed to vote. They should be the only ones allowed to be elected to Parliament, because they'd be the only ones who've been the volunteer force that have genuinely sacrificed, they have proven themselves, and only they should be allowed to be elected to Parliament. Not agreed by the broader political class, as you can well imagine. But it was an interesting tension of the time, and political parties had to think about how to appeal to that return services vote in their appeal. The difference, however, is kind of fascinating, and it gets more fascinating the more I look at it. You will have seen many war memorials, local war memorials around Australia, and now having gone around and looked at many war memorials in other parts of the world, it is striking the difference between what we see in our local communities as war memorials and what other communities do in terms of war memorials. They look very similar, but what is on them is remarkably different. I remember the first time I ever went to the United States of America many years ago, and just by, there was a work trip, and I just happened to be sent to Indianapolis, not the most attractive city in North America, and not where one would imagine one would go for the first trip to New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles. No, I went to Indianapolis, and I landed in Indianapolis, and I found it an absolutely riveting experience, because if you may or may not know that Indianapolis is the headquarters of the American Legion, and actually the centre just goes for 2 kilometres of war memorials, the centre of Indianapolis. It is a fascinating place to visit, and I spent a very long time there looking at the war memorials. They look exactly like the stuff that we see in Australia. But what was written on them was completely different. None of this lest we forget stuff. This was a triumph of this American spirit. This is lots of words about freedom and liberty and this and that. But when you look at what we've done as a community, you notice that on a number of our war memorials, particularly the local ones, at least everyone had fought. Not just those who died. Occasionally you've got the little cross of the ones who died in service, but often it's the people from the local community. So you rarely see that in Canada or New Zealand or South Africa, or I've just come back from South Africa, so I was visiting war memorials at Durban, Peters, Marix, Durban, these sorts of places, Cape Town, again, similar looking things, but it was the names of the dead. It was about commemorative, it was about tragedy, it was about a kind of remembrance, commemoration. But of course, in Australia, you've got that very strong thing with this is the birth of the nation. This is the making of the Australian people, of the Australian ethos, of the Anzac legend. And that's created some interesting tension in Australian political culture from the get-go. What do we do when we celebrate Remembrance Day or Anzac Day? Are we commemorating the sacrifices of the past, or are we celebrating the birth of the nation? And interestingly, in Australia, we do both. And kind of in a complex, interesting political tension, which says a lot about our political culture and says a lot about what our politicians need to do in 19, 20, 21, 22 to try and create an environment that welcomes potentially disruptive return soldiers and to compensate their families for the incredible loss that they suffered. How do you make that appalling sacrifice meaningful for a community that's in serious sense of appalling loss and grief? And it is a community with serious grief for a long period of time, and we're creating a culture that can try and salve that big wound is a really complex political task that our politicians and our return service organisations spend a lot of time trying to manage and trying to work through. So those immediate post-war are very trying. When you look at the number of return soldiers who came back with serious wounds and disabilities and illnesses, and of course we now know from the pension statistics in the 20s and 30s, the thing that does rise in the 1920s and 30s is pensions for psychological problems. And the hidden history that a number of historians started to uncover in the 1920s and 30s is the cost of that psychological problems on families. The hidden history of alcoholism, unemployment, domestic discord is a very tragic one that the repatriation system worked very hard to manage, but it was an ongoing dilemma for many families. And in fact, in the mid-1930s, there's a debate about a new form of pension that needed to be brought in by the government for return service personnel who actually didn't qualify for a pension. There was no real formal disability that would qualify them for a pension, but they were known as the burnt-out soldier. Turned to alcohol, chronic unemployed, what Americans call hoppers, the people on wandering around the cities, and so they introduced a new pension, I think in 36, 37, for quote-unquote the burnt-out soldier, to provide some sort of mechanism for managing and helping the system those particular issues and that you really couldn't cope with the post-war world. We know that a number of the repatriation schemes didn't work as well as they might have. The employment preference scheme really only worked in New South Wales public service. It didn't work out in the private sector. Many of those companies have handed the jobs on to others while the return soldiers were away, and therefore there was no place for them on return, and so on and so forth. So there are some genuine issues there where things didn't work out as well as the government had promised, and that created, again, a sense of that the society hadn't fulfilled its obligations to the returned soldiers. In that context, a lot of work had to be done in terms of putting more money into the repatriation system, and it actually by the 1930s, repatriation constituted a fifth of all of the Commonwealth government expenditure. It's a huge welfare system, which had been quite innovative and new for all Australians before World War I, went into serious decline. They did very little other welfare systems for Australians who hadn't served in order to fund the repatriation system. And that created a kind of two welfare state system, which inevitably created a sense of antagonism across the divide. And you get a sort of kind of underground culture in Australia of resentment against returned soldiers who were seen to be taking benefits, not always for the good. And of course that particularly affects widows. They get a lot of that sort of reporting. And if you read the repatriation case file, you can see neighbours dogging in widows for taking pensions that the neighbour doesn't think that they deserve. Interestingly, this is still an issue. We still, I think, have 53, 54 widows from the Great War on pensions, so we're still paying Great War pensions, and this will be around for a long time. You may not know that the last person in receipt of a pension for the American Civil War died in 2004. And that's a widow, of course, not like that. But so these things have a very long duration, and they are very significant public investment in 5 minutes. Okay, I'll get there. So a very significant public investment. But I think the crucial thing is just how difficult that immediate post-war period was. It was very difficult for the people returning, and it was very difficult for the families, particularly if they came back with injuries and serious disabilities. We know in the early 1930s, about 26,000 Australian returned service personnel in ongoing chronic rehabilitation convalescent homes because their injuries are so bad that they can't possibly go, their families can't care for them, and they can't possibly work. So it's a very significant long-term burden. And of course you've got the whole, as I said before, the grief issue, again, managed through the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, the right was 60 characters. I had a PhD student, Colin Bale, who did a great book on all of that stuff and showed the interesting ways in which those inscriptions varied in celebrating the sacrifice of their loved ones who died, but some of them quite, about 20% quite angry and bitter. What had it been for? Had it been a meaningful war? Wasn't it a waste? So you've got those tensions in that culture. Was it a meaningful, had the Great War made a difference? Was their sacrifice worthwhile, or had it all been for nothing? And you can see there's no answer to that. But what you're seeing is the tensions in that community as it comes together to try and manage the grief. And that is why the Anzac legend is so important. It's so important whether it's true or false is irrelevant. It's so important because it is the way that Australians came together to try and craft a meaning for something that was so tragic. And how we balance the commemorative and the sombre recognition of the incredible loss and sacrifice with what it means to create a nation is really a very important part of our political culture, and making sure we get the balance right is a critical part of easing that return service